There's a tremendous buzz in this room. It's fantastic. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all here this evening to the Council Chamber in the Lanyon Building here at Queen's University, Belfast. My name's Kenda Crozier. I have to write my name down in case I forget. I'm the head of the School of Nursing and Midwifery, and it's my job to give you some instructions and welcome you to this evening's wonderful event. So I'll start with the housekeeping. We're not expecting any fire alarms, so if there is an alarm, just follow the green signs to the exit, make your way to outside, and we'll convene at the front. Is that right, Kevin? Kevin's the health and safety man. Okay, so with that out of the way, I would like to introduce our guest speaker this evening. Rita Devlin is well known to us as the Director of the Royal College of Nursing Northern Ireland. She represents the members of this nursing union here and ensures their voices are heard in the corridor of power. She's a great champion for education and has engaged with us here at Queen's in the leadership programme for students of nursing and midwifery. And she demonstrates caring, compassion, courage, competence, communication, commitment, all of those 6 C's that all of our applicants to the nursing programme learn off by heart. But all they need is a picture of Rita Devlin. She was made an honorary professor last year, I think it was, Rita, here at Queen's. And we're very, very excited to be working with her. We've already begun collaborating with her. Johanna McMullen and Steph Craig have been working with her on the programme of training called Unlocking Safety, which educates our nursing students to understand and address violence against women and girls. This is an area which we fervently support and work alongside government here, along with the charity Women's Aid. So we're delighted to be part of that initiative, and our students are already taking advantage of that training programme, and we'll be rolling it out further. Rita is also the national lead for the elimination of corridor care. This too is something that we're very passionate about, and it's something that's become increasingly normalised in our health service. And it's something that was unimaginable to us as nurses 6, 7 years ago, but yet it's become all too frequent. And we look forward to continuing our collaboration on these and other initiatives. We're delighted to be joined by your family, Rita, by your mother and your daughters and your sisters, your children, all of your children, and your husband. And also pleased to be joined by Nicola Ranger, who's the UK CEO for RCN, and our chief nurse as well, Maria McElgorn. So we're in the room with the great and the good folks tonight. So I will hand you over now to Professor Rita Devlin. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good evening, and thank you all for taking time to come and listen to me tonight. I'm sure you're all sick listening to me, and celebrate this brilliant honour with me. To say I'm still a bit in shock, even after the year, is an understatement, but I'm absolutely delighted to be an honorary professor of Queen's. I want to thank Queen's for recognising me in this way. It does feel like a huge achievement, and I'm pleased, obviously, for myself, but it's much bigger because it's recognition for nursing and nurses and the profession that I love. So thank you, Queen's, and to all that have made this happen. A wee bit about me. I was fortunate to be born into a large family, although it didn't always feel fortunate at the time, because many times I wished I had more. I was an only child, so I had more space and nicer clothes. And you know you live in a house full of hellions when your mum has to take the biscuits to bed with her at night. So there'll be something for the lunches in the morning. All right, Mum. I'm the second eldest of 7, 6 girls and 1 very lucky boy. And growing up, my parents put great store in education and in making the most of opportunities that we were lucky enough to be given. That ethos shaped my life, and I truly believe that I've made the most of all the opportunities that came my way, and some that I sought out. My parents were resilient and hardworking and wise, and to this day they have supported and celebrate every achievement that I and my siblings have made. My dad is unwell at the minute and unable to come, so I want to dedicate this lecture to him. I also want to acknowledge my mum, who's one of the wisest and most capable women that I have ever met. So as well as, hold on now, done the wrong thing here. As well as opportunities, I've been very lucky to have had some great mentors throughout my life and career, hence the title of the lecture. There are people who showed kindness, shared wise words and experiences, challenged me when I needed it, and helped shape me into the person I am today. This lecture is a tribute to them. I owe them all a great debt of gratitude, for every one of them saw something in me that I didn't see myself. And they helped me to grow and flourish and ultimately shape my career. I'm lucky enough that some of them are in the room here tonight, and I'll say a wee bit more about that. Now, my family have a particular gene. It's called the can't be asked gene. And we are basically sloths, except when it comes to work. We all have a very strong work ethic, which was passed on by our parents. Indeed, your head would have had to have been hanging off to get a day off school in our house. And we also give our all to things that we love doing. So for me, my first love was Irish dancing. It was more than a hobby. It was all consuming. I loved the classes, the competitions, the learning the new steps and dances, and winning medals at Fèis, and above all, making friends. I was probably of average talent, but I worked as hard as any champion, and I was lucky to have a fantastic dancing teacher. Her name was Miss Reid. She'll always be Miss Reid in our house. You wouldn't dare call her anything else. And I'm delighted she's here tonight because she was my first mentor. So Miss Reid was a great leader, formidable but fair, and very quietly behind the scenes, when money was tight because there were so many of us dancing, she levelled the playing field for us. She helped Mum with costumes and shoes and Fèis expenses. She enabled us to be the best that we could be. And for me, that was my first taste of what real leadership is. It's about creating the right environment and levelling the field so that people can reach their full potential. She was in my life from age 16 to 19, from primary school until I became a student nurse. She watched me grow, and she never lost interest in how I was doing, even to this day, and she is here tonight, so put your hand up, Miss Reid. And that is a picture of myself, my sister Angela, my sister Mary winning our first medal. I think it was a class Fèis. Don't look at the clothes because it'll tell you how old I am. And this one then was when we won the All-Ireland Championship for our figure dance. And again, that's myself, my sister, my cousin, Miss Reid's daughter. And at the back, second from left, anybody who knows Paul O'Kelly from the beaches, that's her. So don't tell her I showed that picture, she won't. So that was us, and that was the life that we had. It was all about dancing and everything else. So we loved it. Miss Reid taught me much about hard work, about managing disappointment, about pushing myself to be better, developing stage presence and teamwork, and above all, being resilient. And these were all fabulous attributes, and they've impacted on me throughout my life and served me well when I became a student nurse in the Mater Hospital. She also came back into my life when she started teaching my daughter, and once again, I saw the same interest and care replicated. I can't begin to explain how much I love my time as a student nurse in the Mater Hospital. It was a fabulous place to work, full of real characters, and that was both the staff and the patients. It felt like home to me, and I felt cared for in the Mater, although I faced matron's wrath many times. She took great exception to my punk rock hair, and catching me in the smoking in the convent portion of the hospital nearly caused her to spontaneously combust. but it was eating a sweet while being reprimanded that sent her over the edge. And when I found my old records later, they contained 2 black marks, one for wearing jeans to a progress interview, and one for having the audacity to be eating a Fox's Glacier mint while she was giving off. So that was me and Mum when I graduated from being a student nurse to a staff nurse in the Mater Hospital. I found the patients who attended the Mater absolutely fascinating. They were kind and compassionate towards the student nurses, and they often wiped our tears if we'd had a particularly fierce telling off or if one of our favourite patients had died. Their lives were hard, coming as they did from some of the poorest and most troubled parts of Belfast. There were the diseases of the ages and the environment, mill workers with COPD caused by flax, lung cancers in the workers who made the cigarettes at Gallagher's, asbestosis in the shipyard workers, and this is well before the growth of health and safety. And we nursed people in their early 40s and 50s who were like 80-year-olds due to their general ill health and neglect. And we can't forget pigeon fancier's lung. It actually is a real disease, a common and regularly occurring illness amongst our patients. Although many of these diseases and causes of diseases have disappeared, the health inequalities remain, and new issues and new diseases have taken their place. After I was a year qualified, I decided I would apply for paediatric training in Great Ormond Street. I was accepted, but it wasn't until the October. So in February, I applied for a job in Edinburgh. The only reason it was Edinburgh was because I'd met somebody on holidays, so it was as good a place as any to spend a few months until I began my paediatric training. But someone had different plans for me. 3 weeks before I was to move to Edinburgh, I met my now husband. For him, it was love at first sight. For me, it took a wee while. I decided to go to Edinburgh anyway, as I didn't want to have regrets for not going. But as soon as I landed there, I knew it was a mistake. Brendan proposed in Edinburgh after we knew each other 6 weeks, and I came back to Belfast and we got engaged a whole 3 months later. Who says things don't work fast? The jungle drums worked quickly in the Mater. The day after I got home, I got an irate call from one of my other mentors, Mary Waddell, the nursing officer, asking me why I had not contacted the Mater to let them know I was back. I said I was too embarrassed, as people had only just recovered from my leaving do. But before I knew it, I was ordered to attend the Mater the next day, interviewed and asked where I wanted to work. And I started in the Mater Casualty, as it was called then. I'm very old. The following week. That was the way things worked back then. So don't tell HR, whatever you do. Mary Waddell scared me to death. She was stern, blunt, and took no prisoners. But I was lucky. For some reason, she took an interest in me, and that lasted throughout my whole career until her unfortunate death. I will never forget her and the things that she taught me, and those of you who know her will understand this. I watched how she moved, how she positioned herself in meetings, how she managed other people with absolutely no deference for people that were supposedly her senior. She was undoubtedly a strong, fierce leader, and when you got to know her, she had a wicked sense of humour. She had faith in herself and her abilities, and she taught me that you have to believe in yourself first before you can expect others to believe in you. And we did have a laugh when she got her OBE. I sent her a card saying that the award would only strengthen her superiority complex. R.I.P. Mary. I was 23 years old when I started working as a staff nurse in the Mater Casualty. This was during some of the worst of the troubles, and it was a frightening place to work. We never knew who was coming through the door, and as I was from North Belfast, when we got a standby ambulance call, I literally held my breath until I saw it wasn't one of my family or friends. And this is where I met my next mentor, Mary Hines. The Mater Casualty was a mix of fun, challenge, and dark, dark days, more than any young nurse should have to see or experience. Mary was a fantastic nurse, and I always breathed a sigh of relief when she was on. She was so calm and level-headed, and many times she talked me down from whatever awful thing or person I had just experienced. She demonstrated real leadership even then, and that she had a real empathy for patients, which she's never lost. I have no doubt that we as staff suffered a degree of post-traumatic stress disorder from working in casualties in those days, but at that time it wasn't acknowledged. and we were just expected to get on with it and go and see the next patient. Sectarian strife was rife, and it brought itself into the building. And given we only had a curtain separating us from the waiting rooms, there were times when we genuinely feared for our safety, and that of the other patients sitting in the waiting room. Often we had to take elderly relatives into the cubicles to make sure they were safe. So Mary and I crossed paths on other occasions, as you will hear as I go on. It was when I was working in casualty that I got married. I have to say, Matron wasn't very impressed at the idea of nurses getting married and laying with men, as she said. And I had to listen to a very stern lecture before I could get my marriage leave signed off. From that day, my husband has supported me in everything I have done, and I honestly wouldn't be here without him. As I've said, the dark humour and camaraderie and fantastic team within the department helped us get through some horrendous experiences, but they eventually take their toll, and eventually I couldn't face going to work in casualty anymore, as it was having a detrimental impact on my mental and physical health. So following a particularly traumatic night, I asked for a transfer back to the medical wards. Mary Waddell didn't call me weak, didn't think any less of me. She facilitated the move without a beat and made me reflect on what my next step should be. Again, here I witnessed compassionate leadership, but she set an expectation that I would grow and develop in my career and make changes within nursing. She believed I had the ability to do that, and so I've carried that with me wherever I go. During my time in the medical wards then, I decided I want to do some different things, and I took opportunities for secondments in patient dependency and workforce planning projects, implementing the extended role of the nurse, audit, and implementing new record keeping system. And this is where I met the third Mary, Mary Hanratty. This is honestly like a book that we read, the four Marys, only there was three of them. So Mary Hanratty, or Professor Hanratty as I should call her, was a very important person in nursing at that time. And she may not remember, but the first time we met, we had a bit of a disagreement about nursing records. I remember thinking I was in trouble. Imagine the cheek of me disagreeing with Professor Hanratty. But when she came out of the room, she came over and congratulated me for holding my own in an argument. She encouraged me to think for myself and not to be afraid to question and speak up, all good qualities in a leader. And I learned that leadership isn't always about being right. It's about having an opinion or a view, but also being willing to hear others and listen to others and learn from others and not be afraid to be wrong. From that day to now, Mary has been so generous with her time, her advice, and in time she became an actress in a play that I wrote. More of that later. I moved from the matter to the city as a ward sister and then the professional development lead for acute medicine. And here I started doing some work with the University of Ulster and Mullingar Hospital. And this was about looking at the care of older people and developing person-centred care, teaching nurses to see beyond the disease to the person. It was about this time that I started taking a real interest in learning about nursing leadership. And that has really been my focus for the past 20 years. That's me as a staff nurse. I moved to the Ulster then to a newly created post of person-centred care lead. And as the post was new, it gave me an opportunity to do things that I wanted to. I knew that nursing leadership was the key to delivering better care for patients and for creating a culture where people can reach their full potential. And that is a key component of nursing leadership. So I developed and created the first senior nurse toolkit for ward sisters and charge nurses. And at this time then, I also completed my postgrad diploma in facilitation and then did my master's in lifelong learning. It was here that I learned what I think are very important things. Adults only learn things that they're interested in. Adults already come with a wealth of experience, so any new learning will be impacted by those two things. This new knowledge and understanding helped me develop a new programme for senior nurses that felt relevant, realistic and achievable, but that pushed the boundaries and made them challenge themselves and their behaviours. Because as we all know, leadership isn't about what you say, it's about how you behave towards those you lead and also how you manage those above you. It was also here that I started doing some work with Mary Hines again, as she's commissioned some leadership programmes. At this point then, Mary was the director of the RCN. And to be honest, the RCN was an organisation I'd been a member of for my whole nursing career. But that was only in case I got into trouble, which was quite likely, and needed their help. I knew how Mary worked and was intrigued as to how she would change the organisation. And when a job came up in the RCN as Professional Development Officer, I decided to apply and luckily was successful. We all know there's thousands of books on leadership and how leaders should behave, but for me, they didn't explore the unique role of a nurse in leadership. When you're a nurse leader, you're still a nurse working to the code of conduct, and you're still expected to put patients first. This frequently gets overshadowed by the need to work to budget, work corporately, and be compliant with the rest of the senior managers and executive team. So the role of the leadership programme was to help registered nurses be able to manoeuvre and do both. This for me is the real leadership required if we want patients to get good quality care and the best experience while we also spending taxpayers' money wisely. Working at the RCN then at a national level allowed me to develop and deliver this style of programme, and I was encouraged in this by Mary Hines and then by Janice Smith. Strong leaders who have never forgotten that we are all here to serve patients, and our role in the RCN is to give nurses the resource, confidence and self-belief to do that. We are still delivering these programmes to our nurses and evaluations are excellent, but we have a lot to do to challenge the cultures in which our nurses at all levels are being asked to work. And as a senior nurse leader, I will do everything I can to make this happen. Moving on then, one of the greatest experiences I had was being awarded a Florence Nightingale Scholarship in Nursing Leadership in 2010. The interview was held in Buckingham Palace Road, very posh, and it was conducted by a group of all male and very posh older trustees, mostly from the private banking industry. Feeling I had nothing to lose, I asked them more questions than they did me. I asked them why they had allowed the banking crisis to happen and what responsibility they felt they had for the state of the country's finances. It was a well-rehearsed telling off, which put them in a state of shock. But why waste an opportunity? I left thinking I had as much chance of getting a scholarship as I had of becoming a catwalk model. But speaking up obviously works, as not only was I awarded the scholarship, but they increased my ask from 5,000 to 15,000 and insisted I enrolled on a high potential leadership programme in Harvard University. What an experience Harvard was. I was only one of two not-for-profit organisations represented in the 100-strong group. Not only that, I was elected head of my learning group, which was all men, which was absolutely terrifying, but a challenge to be met. I don't think I did too badly. I handled those men very well. And they had a lot to learn, to be honest. They weren't as smart as they thought they were. The programme was really interesting because it came on the back of the worldwide banking crisis. And in the lectures, the Harvard staff admitted that they had had to rethink their approach to leadership, as there had been a huge number of Harvard graduates involved in the collapse of the banks. They were testing out new views and ideas around leadership. And what do you know? They had realised that compassionate and facilitative leadership was the way to lead. Of course, I was in my element, given that's what I'd been teaching for years. The scholarship helped me to look at the importance of being a good leader when times are difficult and cultures are poor, and leaders revert to command and control inappropriately. As part of my programme, I spent some time in Boston Medical Centre, which was heading towards bankruptcy, and I met two fabulous women there who had been drafted in to rescue the hospital. I also went to mid-staffs to learn about how things had gone so wrong and what they were doing to try to recover patient and staff confidence in the organisation. And I also spent some time with the Metropolitan Police, who were then embroiled in a racism scandal. The common denominator in all these organisations was the culture of an organisation, a failure to learn, a command and control leadership style, and a complete lack of professional curiosity to understand what was happening, and a disregard for the people who were actually delivering services and who knew what would work and what wouldn't. But what a privilege to be able to experience all this as part of being a nurse. I have always loved exploring new ways of learning, and in the RCN I found an organisation where the only boundary was my own imagination. There were absolutely no barriers put in my way, and as a result, Sometimes ideas came out of my mouth, and before I knew it, I was tasked by Janice Smith to go ahead and make it happen. This caused two events to happen. The first one was the Senior Nurse Leadership Challenge. Here we designed a series of scenarios, put nurses into groups, and judged them on how well they dealt with the scenarios. And it isn't an exaggeration to say that some of the actors who judged the scenarios threw themselves into the roles so well that we had to have tissues at the ready when the nurses came out of the groups. So we know experiential learning is about feeling and understanding, and we certainly got the most of everyone on that day. The event is still running, is so well evaluated and appreciated by the people who take part. So well done to Ruth and her team for keeping it going. Now, one of the scenarios involved a nurse who had been referred to the regulator, the Nursing and Midwifery Council. Many participants at the Leadership Challenge told me they wished that had been longer and they'd had more time to explore it. So I talked to Janice about doing something, and again I was told to go and make it happen. Thus, Regulating Rita was born. And my next adventure came to life. Regulating Rita was a play I wrote about a nurse who'd got into trouble and who had been referred to the NMC and been disciplined and then sacked by her trust. I wanted to explore it not only from the nurse's angle, but also the pressures within the system and the impact a lack of leadership can have on patient care. I wrote the script, gathered a group of willing actors, and I say willing, and this is where Mary Hanratty came back into the picture. At that time, Mary was an NMC council member and had vast experience of the regulatory process. So who else would I approach but her to act in the play? I have never met a more willing volunteer. She was such support and helped keep me right. Even when I doubted my ability to pull it off, her and Janice kept me going. At first, we were going to produce the play just for video, but then we thought, why not put it on the stage? See, ideas come into your head. They shouldn't. The next thing I knew, we were in rehearsals at the Mac Theatre. I was producing and directing an actual real-life play, and an opening night was organised. It was a sellout, and we got brilliant feedback thanks to the fantastic cast. We had people in tears in the audience who required some counselling, but better to learn from a play than in real life. We subsequently performed it at the Millennium Theatre in Derry and at Congress in Liverpool. We videoed it and we still show it to every senior nurse toolkit to demonstrate role and responsibility and accountabilities of senior nurses and the importance of leadership and speaking up on behalf of your patients and your staff. The next actor in my life story was Pat Cullen. Janice had retired and Pat became the director of the RCN in Northern Ireland. And what a whirlwind we experienced when she came. Nurses in Northern Ireland had fallen behind the rest of the UK in terms of pay. We were short of nearly 3,000 nurses, and the workload and complexity of patients had increased significantly. We had no Northern Ireland executive, and it was decided enough was enough. And for the first time in the 101-year history, RCN members in Northern Ireland went on strike. The planning and worrying and soul searching that went into that decision and the subsequent strike action made for some of the most difficult days in my working life. There was no doubt in my mind that it was the right thing to do, but I just couldn't believe that we were now living in a country where politicians were prepared to let their nurses take to the streets to demand fair pay, but more importantly, safe staffing. There was, in my view, a complete failure of political leadership that allowed that to happen. And it was shameful that we had to resort to that. When you call members to take strike action, it is a huge moral, ethical and personal responsibility. I was responsible for deciding what services we would provide nurses for and what services we would remove nurses from. I have never been so conflicted in all my life. You're leading members and they trust that you're doing the right thing for the right reason. I had many sleepless nights over this time and actually cried on the morning of the strike, of the first day of the strike, as did many of my fellow nurses. The one thing that helped massively was the support we got from the public. They joined us in their droves with hot food, hot drinks and solidarity, and they told us to keep going. Patients joined us on the picket line, and if it hadn't been for them, we couldn't have kept it up. And that's my friend, Tiny Tears, Anne-Marie, who cries at the drop of a hat. But anyway, So it took us another 4 days of strike action to get the Northern Ireland Executive back up and running. And on the second day it was back up, we met with the new Health Minister, Robin Swan. As you know, our dispute wasn't only about pay. There were other issues that needed to be addressed so we could ensure our nurses could care for patients better. So Colin, my big Scottish friend, where are you, Colin? Colin and I were dispatched to Castle Buildings by Pat to negotiate a settlement, and we were told we weren't allowed to leave until it was sorted. It was a very long and stressful day, but we negotiated a settlement that included pay and issues on staffing. Colin and I were exhausted when we finally left Castle Buildings, which, by the way, was a very poor house. We didn't even get a cup of tea or a sandwich all day. And poor Colin learned the hard way how grumpy I become when I'm not fed and watered regularly. But what a sense of achievement we had. On behalf of our members, we had settled pay and made movements towards increasing the numbers of nurses. Many patients said we had got Stormont back. Many people said we had got Stormont back up and running, including the media. But as nurses, we had flexed our muscles and we had used our voices and we had set a marker for the future. And collective leadership made that happen. We went straight from strike action into COVID. What a surreal time we experienced there. At this stage, I had become the director of the RCN in Northern Ireland, while Pat took on the role of the General Secretary. I'm not going to rehearse the COVID period because we all lived through it and we know what it was like. But in the RCN, we spent all our time trying to look after the nurses who were looking after the patients. And we are still dealing with the after effects of COVID on nurses' health and well-being. There is no doubt about that. There have been some very difficult times, both personally and professionally, as I'm sure is the same with everyone here this evening. There were times when I felt I couldn't keep going, but my friends and my work colleagues stood up and supported me through these times. My Mater Mafia family, it does exist. It's very real, and most of them are in the room tonight, and I couldn't do without them. My work colleagues, especially Siobhan, my executive assistant, who makes my life very easy and is the best person that you could have in your corner. Nicola, my boss, who is fantastic, and as I've said to you, Colin, the big Scottish fella. And my good friends, Catherine and Michael, as well as my parents and siblings and my own brilliant children. They're only brilliant when I like them to be brilliant. Sometimes they're not so brilliant. They're probably mortified by me standing up here. I count myself so lucky to be surrounded by these people. And if you're ever in doubt of what's important in your life, it is people and it is friends. And if you're ever in difficulty, the people who help you are your friends. They have been there for me in the best of times and the worst of times. And thankfully, they have been able to come here tonight to celebrate, which has been absolutely fantastic for me. Nursing has given me a fantastic career, from clinical to managerial through to education and learning, and now in the RCN as Executive Director of Nursing. I could never have predicted I would end up here, but I believe this is the best job in nursing, as it allows me to take everything I have ever learnt and apply it to every scenario that I find myself involved in. Most of the work I do now is political, trying to influence ministers, the Health Committee, the Department of Health. We all in this room know that the health service has to change if we are to remain fit for purpose and to deliver for the people of Northern Ireland. And I believe I can be a leader for change. And I believe most of the people in this room can be a leader for change. We need to persuade politicians to be braver and to take risks. We need the Department of Health to listen to its biggest asset, which is the nursing workforce. And we need to help patients and the community become more involved in and more responsible for their own health and well-being. This is where I believe as a nurse I can do most good for patients. I remain a nurse to my core, whether at the bedside or in Stormont. I am as proud to be a nurse today as I was the first day I put on my uniform in the Mater Hospital. And I just want to leave you with this final quote, which I hope sums up my attitude to life. Thank you very much.